timid or shy. The spirit of the island is what we share, of giving and care. Thank you to your mama for bringing you up right, knowing how to love and what is wrong and right. Gift from God is what you truly are, and I wanna say thank you. We are connected through the ocean, people of the sea together as one. We wanna say aloha and good day. We wanna say talofa, maloelele, pulavinaka, kia orana, kia ora. Whakalofa lai atu, miplahama maslungungimyu, a jewel of the island, a queen of the Pacific Sea. Haina, you're the one to be, pearl of the Pacific Sea. South Pacific beauty, you are bird of paradise to me, queen of the Pacific Sea.
Sweet. Yeah, welcome and thanks everybody. I played that song in honor of Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I have a background from my colleagues from Tacoma Pierce County, but I'm going to steal this and then put King County over there. Yeah, so thank you all for joining us both on the Zoom and the Facebook Live. We are living on Voices of the South Pacific. Before I pass it off to Scarlett and Sala, just some overviews and requests to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Be mindful of your background noises and distractions out around you as much as possible. And then we will monitor the Zoom and Facebook chats for questions and comments. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and pass it off to our amazing therapists.
Good evening, everyone. It's so great to be back in this space with you all. And woo, it's tonight. I'm super excited about this discussion that Sal and I are going to be having, and Sal will be running the presentation. We're going to be talking about depression and anxiety. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Scarlett Ekiroma. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and boundaries coach. I've been in this field for over a decade, and I work out of my private practice in the States. I see clients in Washington, Georgia, and Florida. I'm super excited for Sala to my, what I always say, if you see me on social media, I'm like, my homie, my ace, to talk about these discussions and to have this community conversation, to continue to expand and share this information with you all, because a lot of times we walk around not knowing and just kind of guess, and we're here to share like this is what it is. And I'm glad we're able to answer the community questions and just kind of debunk all the myths that possibly go around about in our communities about depression and anxiety. So with that being said, again, welcome everyone, and I'm going to pass it on over to my colleague Sala. Sala, it's all yours.
Hey, thank you, Scarlett. I feel like we're always, when you were like, we're super excited about this conversation tonight. In my mind, I'm like, dang, we're always excited about the conversations, about the community conversations. See, that's how you know that like we like the work that we do. Because we're always excited to connect with our communities and be able to serve our communities any way that we can. But as you guys know, my name is Sala Afalava. I'm also a licensed mental health therapist here in Washington, also working out of my own private practice, seeing clients that way, and also attending school. Just want to give a heads up notice. If you see me yawning a couple times, please excuse me. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to be like, trying to say that I'm tired. I am still jet lagged. I spent like the last 2 weeks in Europe and just getting back this weekend, so I'm still a bit jet lagged. So if you see me yawning every now and then, just know that it's not that I'm tired or anything. I'm just still a little bit jet lagged. But anyhow, I'm excited about tonight's topic. We'll be talking about depression and anxiety. And I know that this can seem like really two big, topics that we're putting together in one. But really, you'll see just how these depression and anxiety just kind of goes hand in hand together. Scarlett and I were just talking prior to this, and we're talking about how depression is also a big comorbidity to anxiety. So if you get anxious a couple times, more than likely, pretty much what that means is more than likely you'll be depressed. So tonight it's going to be a lot of information, but I think we can handle it. We got this. So let me share my screen and we will get going. All right. Can everybody see?
You're good.
Okay. Alrighty. So
Before you
depression,
begin,
anxiety.
Sala,
Oh, yep. Yes. Go
before
for it.
you begin, just as a reminder, again, if you have questions in the midst of what we're talking about, please raise your hand and unmute yourself, or you can shoot your question or put your question in the Zoom chat. And for those who are watching on Facebook Live, you can put it in the Facebook Live, and then we will answer your question there too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good reminder. Yes. Again, like I know that Scarlett and I can just keep talking and talking all night long, but we really don't want that. We want engagement. So, if you have any questions, comments, or even just sharing your own stories, your own experiences, if you're willing, and if it's something that you want to do, and because it's for the betterment of our communities, it's for the betterment of, you never know how your own story might help someone that's listening or someone that's joining us right now. And, maybe they're a lot more hesitant to share their story. But when you are able to share your story about depression or anxiety, it can just encourage them to open up as well. And also, it's a way for us to kind of destigmatize mental health, right? When we are talking about it, when we keep talking about these things, or when we share our stories about these things that we go through. I feel like that's a way that we're also able to kind of not have stigma around these things. We're always talking about stigma around mental health. Well, one of the ways that we can navigate that is by sharing our stories, because then somebody else might not feel alone in what they're going through. So yes, be open, share. You guys know us already. So, okay, let's get going. See, I had some time. I made it all nice for you guys. Like, see, it all like nice transition and everything. So tonight's agenda, we're really going to define depression. We're really going to define anxiety. When I was kind of putting this together, I was thinking about how right now in our society, you hear a lot of people just kind of out of nowhere say, oh, I'm so depressed, every little thing. They feel like, oh, I'm so depressed, like I'm like, so anxious right now, or I'm always anxious. It's almost like people just kind of say these things just to say it, right? So when we are going through this class, like, we are defining the symptoms of depression and anxiety directly from the DSM, or the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. So we're bringing everything directly from there. That's kind of like the Bible of mental disorders right there. So we're bringing everything from there, all the information from there, just so that we can give our communities like the accurate information on what's out there with depression, anxiety, because you can be anxious, you can have anxiety, but not be clinically anxious, but not be clinically diagnosed as, you have some type of anxiety disorder. As you guys will kind of hear later on in tonight's class, like, you can be anxious. Like, it's having anxiety is not necessarily a bad thing. Anxiety is something that kind of just helps us to maybe do better in some of the things, and it's something that helps us. It can help us, but it does get to a point where anxiety becomes clinically to the point where it's severe enough to where it affects us. So here I am already talking so much about depression and anxiety before we even started. I'm just at the agenda. So we're going to define depression and anxiety, what depression and anxiety looks like. That means I'm just going to give some examples of what these symptoms can look like, behavior wise, maybe some thoughts, and what that can look like or feel like for people. And then just going through, why do people get depressed and anxious? And then how can we navigate some of the cultural stigmas around depression and anxiety? All right, so before we start, we're just going to watch a short video about depression. And I think this video does a really good job of just being able to tell us a little bit about depression. And of course, I'm going to go over it again. So let me know, Scarlett, if the sound comes through okay.
Depression is a disorder that afflicts over 10% of the world's population, but we as a society know little about it. Stereotypes tell us that depressed people are weak, unless they happen to be a tortured artist. It can be difficult to understand depression because it's invisible. It's a disorder defined by thoughts, behaviors, and feelings, rather than obvious symptoms like vomiting, rashes, or fever. Those who have experienced depression are all too familiar with comments from misguided friends such as "snap out of it" or "just get up and do something." Even those with depression might have a hard time understanding what they are experiencing, and they often blame themselves for not being able to snap out of it. To understand what depression really is, we need to talk about symptoms. First of all, depression has symptoms related to how someone feels. These symptoms include nearly constant feelings of sadness, anger, guilt, or hopelessness. Next, there are symptoms related to behavior. They include social withdrawal, a lack of energy, low motivation, poor concentration, sleep problems, or significant changes in appetite. Finally, symptoms related to thoughts include poor self-esteem, thoughts of suicide, and loss of interest in regular activities. Symptoms of depression must last at least 1 week, and they are often cyclical. This means that the symptoms can come and go over a period of months or years. A person who experiences depression once is likely to have future episodes. It can be difficult to think of these thoughts, feelings, and behaviors as symptoms. To many of us, because they are in our head, they can seem like decisions. It can seem like someone who is depressed has chosen to be lazy and sleep all day, or they have decided to stop spending time with friends because they have a bad attitude. But remember, what's in our head isn't imaginary. Our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are influenced by a complex series of chemicals in our brains. The exact causes of depression are poorly understood, but we have an idea of factors that influence the illness. We know that changes to hormones in the brain, called neurotransmitters, can have a major effect on depression. Many medications used in the treatment of depression work by increasing the levels of these neurotransmitters. We also know that genetics play an important role in depression. People who have a family history of depression are more likely to experience the disorder. Just because your parents had depression doesn't mean you necessarily will, but the chances are greater. Finally, we know that environmental factors play a role in depression. Living in poverty, experiencing a traumatic event, or other stressful situations may trigger the disorder. That being said, depression does not always have a clear trigger, which often leads to a person not understanding why they feel so down. Treatment for depression usually includes psychotherapy and medication. Either can work on its own, but a combination of both medication and therapy has been found to be the most effective. In summary, depression is a disorder that's widespread but poorly understood. The symptoms can negatively affect a person's thoughts, feelings, and behavior to a debilitating degree. However, treatments that include medication, psychotherapy, or a combination of the two can help to manage to eliminate the symptoms of depression.
All right, before we move on to our next slide, just want to take some time to pause and see if there were any maybe reflections on that short clip or just comments or anything that kind of stood out to anyone particularly that they just want to share.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and just be bold about it. Yes, I know it's something that I was triggered to get to the depression because I was in 3 mobile accidents within a small time period, and it just hit me. And when your body is not the same anymore, you just so it is kind of like trigger because when we're born, of course we're not depressed. We're born as a regular human and we don't come out depressed. So it is something that for my personal walk is that something triggered me to feel what I felt. and
Mm.
and just by listening to this, it was exactly how I was distanced from people. I didn't eat. I went through this and it's something I have to say, people's bodies are not the same that is going to
Yeah.
heal overnight. It's
Mm-hmm.
not gonna, it's not, it takes time for people to even understand that the word
Yeah.
depression, to
Mm-hmm.
even claim it. I'll just
Yeah.
say to even claim it. But I just wanted to share that, and be real about, what I had to go through my personal walk, and that, it was a triggered emotion that hit me, and it's real, and people
Mhm.
have different scenarios.
Mm.
Mine was because it was triggered because I was into an accident and my body was not the same. And of course, with such a person who was very active in the community, and then you look at yourself, you're like, hey, what happened to Vicky Navarro? What really happened
Yeah.
to Vicky Navarro? But as time, the healing and the positive and prayers, all that
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
combined, here I am
Mhm.
to now even stronger. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Yeah. Most definitely. Thanks, Vicky. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Vicky. Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the um I think the thing that always stands out for me is just like our biochemistry makeup, that
Yeah.
it does affect how we like depression and anxiety. In this case, we're talking about depression. And I think there's an underestimation that happens that people don't really
Yeah.
consider,
Yeah.
because it's a lot of times what I've come across with people who come into my office, where it's literally people will say, just pick yourself up by the bootstraps and go. And it's just
Yeah.
like, well, there's actually, let's talk about actually what's actually going on biochemically inside of you. Because that
Mm-hmm.
there's this, let's do an assessment on that. And so I really think people just, we have to consider, like in the seats that Solomon and I sit in, we have to consider all things. And that's what we're, want to share with you all. It's like,
Yeah.
it's sometimes for some people, you just can't, it just doesn't go away. Like there's really something biochemically going on
Yeah.
within them that they need something to help them literally balance. As they was
Yeah.
talking about the neurotransmitters and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to share too, because, when the anxiety kicked in, because that kind of came in play, is that, I even had my cousin, I had to get a car because of course I have a family to transport, but the new
Mm-hmm.
car that I got was sitting in the driveway, just because
Yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
fear came in, the
Mm-hmm.
anxiety came in, and I just didn't want to be a, uh, behind that wheel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I said the two do really, for myself, for
Mm-hmm.
my personal walk,
Mm-hmm.
because everyone's different. It did come into play for myself.
Yeah.
But like I said, the healing, everything took, not like I said, years, and and
Mm-hmm.
the imbalance of my body, the chemicals was like, and people were just like, yeah, can you just snap out of that?
Yeah.
and even like my mom was saying, you got to get up. You got to get up.
Mhm.
And it wasn't so easy for me to just
Mhm.
say, you have kids, you got to get up. And it took her so many times to, to repeat herself over and over again, just to, like, hey, you know, I had to
Yeah.
get up, right? But I just,
Mhm.
yeah, so like this whole video was, for my personal walk, that was me. Thank you.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's so much going on, and I think that's why it's so important to consider, because even some of the things that like Vicky was sharing, and even Scarlett with the talking about the neurotransmitters and all of these things that's happening in our bodies, in our brains, right? The chemicals that's happening in our brain. And like a lot of time people don't consider that, and I think it's really important to make that a big deal. Like, hey, like even in the video, it was talking about, I think like mentioning genetic factors, right? And so you can
Mhm.
inherit the vulnerability to be able to develop depression. It doesn't mean that
Mhm.
you inherit like depression, but you can inherit the vulnerability genes to be
Mhm.
able. It makes you susceptible to depression.
Mhm.
It's almost kind of like, like when let's say someone in your family has like your family has a history of like breast cancer or something, right? And so like you can count down the line how many women in your family have breast cancer. And so to me, I'm like, okay, well then I know I'm vulnerable to getting breast cancer, right? So I'm constantly having to go check and things like that, making sure I'm up to date with my appointments. And so people are more able to accept that, right? But when we say depression is also the same way, like it's people are like, what? No, because it's to
Yeah.
them it's really hard to kind of think about that or accept that, when it's like it really is like it's
Yeah.
as it was mentioned in the video. There's biological factors, there's psychological factors, as they're trying to, like, they're not really quite sure or really able to hone down as the this is exactly what caused depression, right? Like there's a couple of different, there's also environmental factors that can,
Mhm.
cause someone to have depressive symptoms and things like. So there's so many different things that I think we need to consider. And so like just to be able to continue to let our communities know, like, hey, when your kid is not functioning within their baseline norm, and you see
Mhm.
them just kind of sleeping in and just isolating themselves from friends, and you're there just like, hey, you're not doing your chores, like get up, do your chores, get do this.
Mhm.
It's like just like having an understanding, like, wait, like what is going on, not just with our
Mhm.
kids, but like with people that we know, right? Because
Mhm.
depression can look so different. Just when you think you know what it looks like, it's like and then somebody just kind of like completes suicide, and you're like, they were depressed for X amount, and you're like, what? That's the happiest guy I always see him. They're
Mhm.
always happy. They're always joking around. And it's like you can never know what someone is truly kind of going through or
Going.
experiencing.
Yeah.
Mhm. Anything else? I think like maybe one thing before we move on, if no one has anything to add, and how it was talking about, I think it's important what it was talking about, how depression is invisible. Wow, I almost couldn't say that. It's invisible, right? And they
Mhm.
define depression, which in the DSM it does the same thing. It defines it by thoughts, behavior, and feelings. So someone could have different symptoms that's all about, like, could be suicidal thoughts, how they feel. So it could be like their affect, they're sad, they're angry, they're irritable. And then also behavior wise, like how are they acting. So I think that's also important to kind of know, or to kind of remember from the video, is how it talks about how depression is invisible, but it's a disorder that's
Yeah.
defined by thoughts, behaviors, and feelings. So it's not like it's symptomatic, like, you know, someone throwing up or something where people can see it, right? Or you run a fever and you know, you kind of like take the temperature and it's like 102, like, oh, I can see that, like that's proof.
Yeah.
But it's something, it's a disorder that's invisible. Why do I feel like I can't say that word?
You're good.
Invisible. I feel like I'm trying to say indivisible. Invisible. It's an invisible disorder. So
Yeah.
that's kind of good to note.
Mm. Yeah, and just I think one of the things that I think what just to add on what you're saying, Sal, is with it being invisible is because we're so used to looking for in the medical model something tangible.
Ooh, yeah.
You
That's
know,
true.
because the
That's
medical
true.
model is always like you have to see it
Yep.
in order to believe it.
Yep.
With mental health and depression, it's the
Mhm.
opposite. It's not. It's literally invisible. And you have to pay attention to truly what's going on internally.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah. All right. If there's nothing else, then we will move on. Okay. So depression. Depression, before I just go into detail talking about the slide, just know that, you know, sometimes, like I mentioned before, like we hear a lot of people just kind of throw around the word depression, right? Like they could be feeling sad, and instead of using sad, the word sad, they'll just say, oh, I'm so depressed, you know? So it's a use that's kind of, it's depression is this word that's kind of used like in everyday language. You hear it a lot, and it can describe a number of feelings, like sadness, frustration, disappointment, things like that. And however, like really, in clinical practice, the term depression, or it's also called a major depressive disorder or MDD, really kind of, it looks different. It looks different than just from the regular day to day that everybody kind of throws around depression, when everybody's just kind of like, oh yeah, when they're sad or frustrated or whatnot, they're just say, oh, I'm just feeling depressed. It's like depression in the clinical terms, it just looks completely different. And it's defined differently, right? Than just your day to day, you know, when you're just throwing around the word depression. But clinically, major depression or depression is a lot more intense. It lasts longer. I know the video says 1 week, but DSM, it says it lasts like symptoms last like 2 weeks or more. Major depression, it also significantly interferes with the person's effective day-to-day functioning. So those are that's how you're able to kind of um, distinguish between, you know, someone just kind of saying depressed because they are saying it in replacement of the words frustration, or they're sad, or feeling that way, and then clinical depression is completely different. So what you see here on this slide are the criterias, are the clinical criterias of depression, of major depressive disorder, as per the DSM-5, or the Bible, pretty much, of mental health disorders. So let's go through them. One of the criterias is for you to be able to get this clinical diagnosis of major depressive disorder is experiencing depressed mood most of the day and nearly every day. You'll have diminished interest or pleasure in either all or almost all activities most of the day or nearly every day. There's significant weight loss when you're not dieting, or for some people, it can be weight gain, or even decreased or increase in your appetite nearly every day. Another criteria is being able to slowing down of thought and a reduction. Like slowing down of thought is when you just feel I don't want to say like lethargic, but like your thought process just isn't how do you say it, Scarlett? Maybe that's just as simple as you can say it. Is your thoughts are kind
Yeah.
of, slowing
Well,
down.
I would say to that, it's like you know what you want to say, but it's just not coming.
There
It's
you
not
go.
connecting.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Like you know what you do want to say, but it's taking you a long time to be able to kind of formulate something to be able to say it, right? So you have your response is delayed in a way. Physical movement, so reduction of physical movement that's observable by others, that means other people can tell. Like it's significant enough to where people are like, you're not moving like how you usually are. Like, are you okay? Like it's observable by others. Another criteria is when you're feeling fatigue or you experience loss of energy almost nearly every day. So remember, like if you're talking about like someone that just feels sad and say that they're depressed, because I feel like everywhere I turn, someone's like, oh, I'm just depressed, when it's really like they're just sad and they just want to say depressed. But what is this red line I see here? Oh, that's weird. You see a red line over there, Scarlett?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
don't know
the
what that is. Wonder what happened.
keep going.
Right. Anyways, fatigue or loss of energy, that threw me up because I was like, what, there's a red line. Fatigue or loss of energy almost nearly every day. So that, like, as we go through this, you can tell just how much more significant these symptoms are for someone to be able to be diagnosed with major depressive disorder or depression. So clinically, these are the criterias. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt nearly every day. So you have these feelings every single day or nearly every day. Diminished ability to think or to concentrate, indecisiveness nearly every day. Recurrent thoughts of death, recurrent suicidal ideations without a specific plan, suicide attempt, even a specific plan for committing or completing suicide. So, when someone like goes to see a therapist, these are the criterias. Like, and let's say they say that they are depressed or they're feeling depressed. They go to see a therapist. These are the criterias that a mental health therapist is looking for, right? And they'll have questions where they'll be able to ask and let the individuals know, just to be able to get this information, right? So they have all kinds of like surveys and questionnaires where they'll be able to assess whether or not you meet these criterias in order for someone to be diagnosed with depression or major depressive disorder. So, in order to receive a diagnosis of depression, these symptoms must cause the individual clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. So that means in order for someone to be diagnosed as clinically depressed, these symptoms is so severe to the point where this person cannot function at work. Like they cannot go to work because when they go to work, or they can't even get up to go to work. It's affecting them at work. It's affecting them at their maybe home life. It's affecting them in their daily functioning, right? So that's another thing that we're also looking for. Also, another thing when it comes to diagnosing someone clinically with depression, is that these criterias cannot be a result of like substance use, or another medical condition. So that's another thing that we're having to like look for, make sure that this person is not using drugs or alcohol or that kind of stuff, because that can affect the symptoms. That can affect how the symptoms show up for people. And then also one of the criterias for, not criterias, but just another thing. Well, yeah, I think it is a criteria that we're looking for is, you must have experienced at least five or more of these criterias or these symptoms. So you must have at least five. So if someone's coming to me and they are, maybe they're saying that they are depressed, like, I would be looking for if they have at least five or more of these criterias. And one of them at least has to be depressed mood or loss of interest or pleasure. Any questions? I feel like that was a lot of information. But again, we just wanted to really kind of be able to hopefully distinguish between, when someone is just kind of like saying depression as a way to replace feeling sad, and what is clinically diagnosed as depression or major
I have a
depressive
question.
disorder.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. When we're talking about depression, I know anxiety has a lot to do with it,
Mhm.
and your thoughts are just. I was diagnosed with bipolar, but I still don't believe I'm bipolar. So, it's kind of weird because I wake up one day, I'm either too anxious because I am too anxious and I'm ready to, to conquer the day. I'm ready to like conquer the world. I want to do 10 million things. And then there's days when I can't even get out of bed. And when I get those days, it's 3, 4, 5 days where I'll just lay in bed. I don't even want to get up, and I have a son, and I feel so bad because besides the anxiety, you get when I'm depressed, I get annoyed that I have to get my ass up. I have to get up. I have to go and take him out. I don't even have to drive him to school because I can't drive. So I can't even, I feel bad that I'm annoyed at the fact that I have to get up out of this safe place of mine, which is the bed, and, put on some shoes and just take him to the bus stop. And, and once you feel like you're irritated, you're annoyed, and you start to feel more depressed because why am I feeling this way? And then, so, it's just horrible. It's just, I don't know. There I go again. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
With the depression and the anxiety, I was telling my mom, and it's a battle in my head 24 hours a day. I also have chronic pain, which was, and it's the last 2 years, but it's a battle in my head that I have to battle with. So it's like just even taking a shower.
Yeah.
Like, am I able to get up to take a shower? Should I take a shower? Oh yes, I need to take a shower. And then it's back and forth. And I don't know if that's really called depression or I don't know what it is. All I know is there's these voices in my head that's just battling. It's a never-ending battle in my head. And I don't know. That's all I gotta say. I guess I am depressed because I'm just frustrated and annoyed and just, even the noises. I'm so heightened up with noises, lights, people around me. Anyways, okay. Thanks for listening. I had to vent.
Well, thank you. That's what these community conversations are for, so that you have the space to to share, and we appreciate you sharing. And I think that's the thing. It's again, the more and more we talk about it, the more and more, that's Sal and I's biggest goal, is to continue to normalize mental health conditions. And so what you're experiencing, I'm pretty sure somebody watching this and somebody who's going to watch this again is going to say, I know what she's talking about. I know what she's talking about. And so I think with regarding depression, so just so you all know, even though because this depression, that the symptoms that Sal is talking about is for a particular diagnosis. And so just because you don't have the 5 symptoms that Sal was talking about, there's literally other diagnoses of depression that we know about. and it's the same thing with anxiety as well. And so
Mhm.
we don't want you to walk away like, well, I don't have 5, so I'm not depressed.
Yeah.
So I don't need to see anybody.
It's
And
good.
it's just like, no, it's still seek
Mhm.
a mental health therapist, licensed therapist, and let them help you figure it out as well.
Mhm.
And so I think with the symptoms that you were sharing, I I'm not sure if you are in therapy service. I would definitely recommend, just so that
Mhm.
you can continue to get, and that's why we are big on going to therapy, because you learn different life skills that literally
Mhm.
you will use for the rest of your life, and you pass it on to whoever your contact circle is. And so
Mhm.
that's the importance of, and also so you have that space to continue to vent and talk about what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Scarlett and I really appreciate it. Thank you for, even if it's just getting on and venting. Yes, we love it. But yes, absolutely what Scarlett was talking about. Like, so again, like with what we're saying, like you can have uh you can have depression, right? You can have depression, but not depressively, not to the point where it's like you can clinically diagnose it as depression, right? Just like I can have anxiety, but then I don't meet any of the clinically significant criteria to be diagnosed as some type of anxiety disorder, right? So I can, because everybody's got anxiety. If I am about to take a test, I get anxious, right? So I can say I have anxiety, but that's the difference that we want everybody to kind of know about, is like you can feel this way, you can experience this, but then there's also sort of that clinical significance where these symptoms right here that you see, these criterias, it meets this clinical diagnosis of major depressive disorder. So what Scarlett was talking about too, like, yeah, there's like about 8 or 9 more under the umbrella of depression, right? That we can diagnose with. But we're not going to get into that because there's a whole lot of things. So think of this class as kind of like basic information that we want to give about depression and anxiety, but not just basic information that you can like just kind of Google off of, but like basics where like we're bringing it directly from the Bible of mental health disorders, right? And we're wanting to kind of share that information with everyone, just so that everyone has like this foundational understanding of depression and anxiety. Okay, so we really do appreciate the sharing. So thank you for sharing. Any other questions or just comments on this before we move on? All right. Okay, so depression can look like, what it can look like in people. So this is not an exhaustive list. Depression, honestly, it can affect any kind of person at any stage of their life. So you can be an introvert, an extrovert, you can be socially active or shy, you can be an elderly, someone that's young, you can be a male, female, you can be rich or you can be poor. It does not discriminate. It just looks different for everyone. Depression can look different for everyone. Let me see. Okay. So let's just go through. I just kind of made some points of what it can look like, what depression can look like. Again, like I said, you might look at this and be like, man, I'm a female. I don't have that. It doesn't look like this is not an entire list. It looks different for everybody. But please feel welcome to be able to share what this can look like for you, so that we can continue to add to this list. But so for males, males can exhibit depressive symptoms related to their mood. Remember how in the video I was talking about how depression is this invisible disorder that's defined by thoughts, by behavior, and by feelings. So by, this is kind of the breakdown of that. So mood, emotional well-being, and behavior. So it can look like, for males, it can be anger, aggressiveness, irritability, restlessness. Emotional well-being, they can feel empty, hopeless. Behavior can be what that can look like behaviorally for males. It can look like excessive drinking, drug use, high risk activities, reduced lack of sexual desire. For females, some of these depressive symptoms that's related to our mood, emotional well-being, and behavior can look like also, again, irritability. So you guys kind of see how it just kind of maybe overlays with each other, right? The same, there's some similarities and some differences. So for females, emotionally, depression can look like, extreme sadness, anxious, feelings of hopelessness, behavior, loss of interest in activities, withdrawing from social engagements. Our sleep patterns are just all out of whack. Maybe we're having difficulty sleeping. Maybe we're having difficulty staying asleep, falling asleep. I would say pretty much like anything that is out of your norm, right? Like if you have like a baseline, or let's say you and your spouse, you and your partner, your partner, you kind of know their baseline behavior, how they usually are in their mood. And then when they behave in a way that you're just kind of like, that's kind of weird. Like I've never seen you do that before. Like you're not usually like this, right? So I feel like that's another indication of like, okay, they're not functioning in what their norm usually is, if you know that person very well. For children, depressive symptoms can look like mood changes, intense sadness. They could be having trouble in school, avoidance behavior, self-harm, decline in school performance, difficulty with sleep, and also thoughts of suicide. So I guess I'm just curious if anybody wants to share, maybe like, I know Vicky had shared earlier, but if you're open to it, to be able to share maybe if you've experienced depression, what that looks like for you, what your experience is, you're more than welcome to kind of share that with the group if you're comfortable, and if you want to. But if not, if there's any questions or comments, or Scarlett, if you want to add anything.
Mhm. The only thing I would add to what this list is, one of the being in this field for a while, one of the biggest indicators for me, whether male, female, child, teenager, is when I see their grooming of someone goes down, declines rapidly. And so that's always like when I used to work in the school system, when I used to see teenage kids, that was one of the first indicators. I was like, oh, I've noticed their hair is disheveled, coming
Oh,
in
that's good.
unkempt.
Yeah.
They would, when they previously dressed like, however they dressed, and then there was just, you can just
Mhm.
tell, like, did they just roll out of bed? So, and that's even the same indicator when I used to, seeing adults, male or female, that was a huge indicator for me, as a therapist, seeing like when I saw their grooming, didn't feel like brushing their teeth, didn't feel like brushing it, like just would come to session, just I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, what's going on? It's like,
Yeah.
what's the stuff? So, especially that is typically a big indicator, especially for children and teens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also want to add that, like, I think for me, in my experience with female clients that experience depression, I think a really, really big, I think maybe indicator for them, and then for their family members, is the loss of appetite. That was really big, at least in my experience with females. And like their family members, their partners, their spouses, they've noticed just they're just not eating. They're like, I'm not hungry. And they're like, I try to eat, but I'm not hungry. I don't have an appetite. So that's another, I would say, thing that's really big, at least in my experience with females that come in and experiencing depression. Okay,
Can I,
any
can I, yeah,
questions?
I
Yeah,
kind
go ahead,
of want
Vicky.
to, I know it's not just with males regarding the behavior of such as drinking excessively and drug use.
Oh yeah.
How
Thank you.
does
Yeah.
that, I mean, for me, it's like, what is the I don't know if is a satisfaction for them to even get to that, the drinking and the drug. I just don't know because I haven't
Yeah.
been there, but I want to help people who's been, going through some emotional, distressions, and some have turned into, things that are their behavior is not, um, and here you're trying to, be able to, connect and, build relationships and the things that we do in the community, but sometimes there's things where you had to step back, and
Mhm.
because of the drinking and the drug use that are in place of the feelings that they were going through, and you want to help
Hmm.
these people who come in your life, because that's a reason why they came in your life. There's some reason why they came to you or whatever.
Mhm.
you know um, how can us, because we do work in the community, how can we, us, especially, um, have a good conversation and get to, like, hey, is there some besides, I don't know how I, because we don't have control of their body either,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying is like, how can we also support in a way where, hey, let's talk about this, or let's transition out of that kind of scenario where I can help you walk, put your get back walking on your feet and be able to lift you up, encourage you to, because I see this, it's not like the first time, but it is out there in the community, and in the work that we want to do is like, we really want to help people, we really want to
Hmm.
engage, build relationships to families and individuals, but there are things that are in their community that also comes in place, whether drinking or drug use, that we all have to deal with as navigators, and I just I don't have the degree, or I don't have the like the process of hey, that is not cool, but how can I shouldn't say influence, but how can I have a good conversation with them and really get a deep dive and say, hey, I left them something to think about, to turn and be able to steer away from those kind of behaviors. So that is kind of my question. Thank you.
Yeah. That's hard, Vicky. And being in that situation as a, working and serving in the community, and because your heart is there and you want to be able to help them, but like what that situation just kind of reminds me of is I get a lot of parents that would come in, and they really want to bring their teens to therapy, right? And um, it's really hard because then at the same time their teens are at the legal age to where if they don't want to come to therapy, their parents can't make them come to therapy, right? So the parents are here kind of like, what can you do? Like, can you, I really they need to be in therapy. This is what's going on, all of this stuff. But, and so it's kind of like a different scenario, but sort of the same concept as far as like, how can we help them? But what I usually kind of advise parents is just, you know, being able to find a way to just connect with their teens, and letting them know, like if, like letting them know the resources that's out there, or maybe how whatever the behavior is, that's like if it's affecting the family, for the parents to be able to talk to them. It's like, hey, look, the grades are going down, we care about you, like what's going on, and just finding a way to connect with them and be able to continue to really strengthen and build a relationship with their teen. Because then ultimately, like, it still has to be the teen that has to make the decision legally, at least, because they're at that point, legally, to be able to reach out to me and be able to get that help. Because no matter how much the parent wants to, the teen is already at the legal age to where if they don't want to, they're not going to, and I can't make him, and the parent can't make them. Right. So it's just about like if the parents is like the closest, maybe resource to the kid, and they have a connection, like just continuing to reach out, continuing to be able to make that connection. I don't know if it would be helpful to like point out or let them know how it's affecting like the family or whatever the effects are of their behavior. But then also kind of finding a way to let them know that there are options, and then just leaving the options with them, to be able to have that choice, to be able to hopefully reach out. But as you were talking, Vicky, like that's just kind of what reminded me of like just being in a situation with like parents, and really kind of wanting their kids to be in therapy, but it's like really nothing they can do about it.
Mhm. No, just to add on, in addition to what Sal was saying, and so there's the first part that you had said, Vicky, about like I think it was framed as like why would somebody do the excessive drinking and drug use? So a lot of that is from what I've seen, it's just a distractor to numb what's
Yeah.
going on.
Mhm.
And it's literally part of that is like whatever it is to do to avoid to feel, because they would rather not feel that, and they would rather feel some type of high, some type of distraction.
Like it's
I
an
think
escape. Yeah.
yeah, it's a huge escape. And so one of the things that when I have come across people in my life who I can see they're going, the excessive drinking, we've seen it at the parties. And one
Yeah.
thing I would say, I would just leave it. I'm like, are you okay?
Mhm.
That's all. And I would just leave it there. And they were just like, yeah, yes, sis, I'm good. I'm just like, you sure? And so they were like, what do you mean? I'm just like, when you're ready to talk, let me know. And I leave it at that. Sometimes they come back to me, sometimes they do, because my whole thing is always to impart a resource to them.
Mhm.
And because there's nothing, because one of the things I know being in this field, until they are tired, that's when they'll
Yeah.
start doing the work to change. And so when I've even had to say that to my clients, they'll come in and complain about something. And I would say, when you're tired, let me know, then we could talk about how to move in a different way. And
Yeah.
some of them weren't, and some of them came tired, and we were able to work through it. But it's just really only, again, just imparting, just asking the reflective question:
Yeah.
are you okay? Are you sure? What's going? Or even when you can ask this, like, are you trying? I noticed like this is going on. Is there something you're trying to avoid? Like, just really
Mhm.
just because not trying to figure it out for them, Vicky, is having them figure it out for themselves.
Yeah.
Because the more and more, sometimes with some people, the more and more you push, the more and more they run away.
True. Yeah. The thing about like with the my parents and their teens, because I mean you'll get parents where they will be successful in maybe guilting
Mm-hmm.
their kids to or their
Mm-hmm.
teenagers to come to therapy, but then when the kid comes to therapy, they are not willing to like open up. They are not willing to work. They are there just sitting there looking at me, looking at them, and they are not
Mm-hmm.
saying a word. And I'm like, okay, all right. So, it gets to that point where even if you are able to provide the transportation, make everything so easy for this person to get the help, right? And then they go there and they sometimes it can be just like, oh, I'm just doing it so I get Vicky off my back. I'm just doing it because Vicky's
Mm-hmm.
so nice to me and I don't want to let her down.
Mm-hmm.
But I echo what Scarlett is saying about like as long as you're continuing to leave your resources with them, right? Like leave the information, leave, continue to remind them, continue to make that connection. Like I was talking with the parents, like continue to make the connections with your teen, continue to build the rapport with your teen. And if and when they are ready to, they'll have the information right there to take that step. Right. So continuing as a community worker, like just being able to, yeah, oh gosh, I can't imagine like just feeling helpless, when you know that there's resources right here that can help, but and it's not working. So for someone with such a heart of compassion to help people, that's really difficult to see. So just continue to leave your flyers, leave your resources, leave the information, leave the phone number, whatever it is. Continue to leave it with them and continue to remind them, like, hey, like I said, a member, like this is what's going on over here, just to let you know, just in case you want to come through. All right. And then that's it. Because you really think about it, there's only so much that's within your control to do in those situations. All right. Okay, there's nothing else, then we'll move through. Ooh, we're coming up to anxiety in the DSM. All right. So, what we have here, are again, like we're bringing it right from, the DSM, which is the Bible for mental health disorders. And the DSM really kind of specifically describes anxiety as excessive worry or apprehensiveness, types of expectations that's happening for someone like more days for at least, I think it's at least, for at least 6 months. It can be about a number of different things. It could be about different activities. It could be about work. It could be about home, but you're just have this excessive worry, right? So again, anxiety, again, I want to echo, like, anxiety is good. Like, having anxiety is good. Like, I would, every time I'm about to take a test, I feel anxious. That type of anxiety is good because that anxiety helps me to prep for this test that I'm about to take, right? So anxiety is something that's always been with us. It helps us to sort of like, survive. It's sort of part of our survival, survival techniques is what we say. So it's just something that's always there for us. However, just like with depression, it does get to a point, almost like this line right here. It gets to a point where anxiety becomes clinically significant enough to where it causes great distress to a person. And that's when we as therapists are looking for these different types of criterias. So as Scarlett mentioned earlier, there's so of anxiety disorders. There's probably 10, at least, that I think there's probably 8 or 10 different types of anxiety disorder. But just for the sake of this class, we just want to keep it basic. We just want to generalize and just talk about anxiety in general. Some of these anxiety disorders also, they all kind of have these kind of the same symptoms. Okay, so these are the criterias in the DSM, that's similar to other anxiety disorders as well. So restlessness or feeling keyed up or on edge, difficulty concentrating or your mind just kind of going blank. There's muscle tension, easily fatigued, irritability, sleep disturbance, such as difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, restlessness, or unsatisfying sleep. So some of these criterias can or symptoms can kind of almost sound like the ones we talked about for depression, right? Which is absolutely yes, which is why anxiety and depression just kind of go hand in hand. And it's said in the DSM that depression is a comorbidity for anxiety. So that means like they kind of go together because if you get anxious long enough, more than likely you'll experience depression. Okay. Let's see what else. Scarlett, do you want to add anything about anxiety?
I again, I think the key emphasis, and when we're talking about depression and anxiety, the one thing that to continue to emphasize is like all of the symptoms that you have, it literally impacts daily functioning, truly,
Mhm.
truly daily functioning. And so, that is like as Sal and I sit in the seats of the therapist, that's what we particularly look at. It's just like, how is this impacting this who's sitting in front of me, their daily functioning?
Yep. Yep. And so, in addition to that, anxiety and worry are associated with 3 or more of these symptoms, of these 6 symptoms, with at least. So when we're looking for kind of diagnosing someone with an anxiety type of disorder, these are this in addition to other sort of criterias depending on the anxiety disorder, is what we're looking for. And it has to at least have, like, these symptoms has to be present. So that means you have to experience these symptoms for more days, and for, I think, at least a duration of like 6 months, if I'm correct. So you have to be experiencing these symptoms for more days than not, for at least 6 months, for you to be able to be diagnosed clinically with some type of anxiety disorder.
Can you, the abbreviation DSM, can you dash V, what is that? Can you
Oh, it's just like
elaborate?
the 5. It's a version. It's like the 5th version. They keep coming up with, every time they keep coming up with, like, different versions of it, but it stands for Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder, 5th edition. Hmm.
That's the when Solace is the Bible of mental health disorders, that's what we're referring to, the DSM. Like,
Yep.
it's a thick book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very, very thick book that you have to
Hmm.
go get in graduate school. So mine's around here somewhere. So
Right.
yeah,
Mine's like
and then
collecting dust.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's the thing. They update it every so few years, because sometimes they'll add stuff, add symptoms, or they'll take
Yeah.
away something.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Yep.
we just, like, for this edition, like they took away a lot of disorders that I had to readjust. Like, as a therapist, we have to readjust to.
Hmm. Yep. But these are directly from the DSM. These criteria, these are the criteria that we're looking for when clients are kind of talking to us and they have anxiety. So like I said, so I, again, like, one of the big things that I keep echoing throughout tonight's class is just the difference between you're having like regular anxiety when I'm like studying for a test, right? Because that's good. That's good anxiety to have. So we're not saying anxiety is bad. It gets to that point where anxiety becomes clinically significant, causes clinical significant distress for an individual. So that's when all of these criterias are kind of, it just goes on and on and on, because like I'll be anxious about taking a test, but then after the test I feel fine, right? I'm okay. I'm not anxious anymore. So it doesn't mean that I'm clinically anxious or I have some type of anxiety disorder. But if how I'm feeling, how my anxiety just continues on and it just goes on, and I'm like feeling this way for more than 6 months, then more than likely, it's causing a clinical distress for you in your life. So it's causing distress for you in your family, in your work. You can't do any work because you're just constantly anxious about something, and it's just kind of disrupting your day-to-day life. Okay. Alrighty. Scarlett, did you want to add anything else here before I move on?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. All right. So moving on. So this video, I really like this video. Instead of just kind of telling you about all of what anxiety kind of looks like, I figured this would be a good video just to kind of share from someone's perspective that has anxiety and lives with anxiety. And so we'll just take a minute to just kind of hear his story.
Initially, I didn't know what to call it. But I remember when I first felt it, I hated the way it made me feel, but still I couldn't let people know that I held it. It weakened me, but I refused to let people see the weak in me. It felt like it was eating me from the inside out. And it made me want to tear the uneasiness from my insides out. My heartbeat, suited for house music, along with the heart pace, each thought race, no route to it. The nervousness, the worry, it sprouts too quick. The panic becomes organic, and I guess I just gotta plow through it. So I do my best to remain calm as the butterflies in my stomach result in sweaty palms. Friends keep asking me why I'm so quiet. I tell them I'm just tired and that nothing's wrong, while all along I just wanna go home and be alone. Because large crowds make me feel small and as though I'm in danger, and I desperately try to keep my eye on every single stranger. Meeting a bunch of new people brings so much pressure to my chest, and I don't talk a lot. I often watch and I let them do the rest. Sometimes I'm scared to succeed. I mean, what if I can't keep it up? Scared of how I'm perceived by the people who show me love. And when the news reports another senseless killing, I am soon engorged in an intense feeling. Thinking of the worst outcomes, I worry about my friends and family, constantly wondering if we'll all soon see a tragedy. I'm asking God to protect them and to look after me while I'm looking over my shoulder and around every corner to make sure no one is after me. And I know that's irrational, but sometimes I feel so nervous I don't even speak properly. I know what I want to say, but the message I try to convey comes out sloppy. See, it's the overthinking, the self-consciousness, the sleepless nights, the nauseousness, the feeling as though I can barely breathe. But I try not to be obvious. I feel terrified and paralyzed, and yet I force a smile through all of it. Self-diagnosis, I'm calling it. This is anxiety, and it resides in me so vibrantly, but I keep it inside of me, quietly, outwardly smiling. Inward emotions collide so violently, and if I can be a person who struggles with a moderate level of anxiety, imagine those who deal with it severely and how every day for them is a fight to breathe, a fight for peace, a fight to be okay.
My name is Brad, and I always battle with anxiety.
My name is Joseph, and anxiety tries to eat at my mind every day.
My name is Sheree, and I deal with anxiety on a daily basis.
My name is Amber, and I balance depression with anxiety.
My name is Chris, and I'm burdened with anxiety every day.
Only 1/3 will receive treatment. Wonder why. Any thoughts? Just want to take a moment to kind of pause and see if anybody had any thoughts or comments about our video.
Someone said in the chat, Tulu sent this out. Wow, great video.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We can put the link on there as soon as I can. But yeah, so just I feel like he said so many of the somatic symptoms of anxiety that he was experiencing, right? Sweaty palms, the increased heart rate, and then also even some of the cognitive things that he was thinking about, some of the thoughts that was coming up, some of his thought process. If you are able to kind of like go through the video again and hear, he was just kind of really sharing a lot of how he felt living with anxiety, right? So let me see. Why do people get depressed and anxious? This is not a complete list. This again are just examples of some of the reasons that we're kind of throwing out there. It could be financial difficulties. You could be going through relationship problems. whether it's a breakup or something, and that can make someone have depressive symptoms, health concerns, social housing related issues, trauma, abuse and neglect. This is just to name a few reasons why people get depressed and anxious. Again, like I said, if you experience anxiety long enough, more than likely depression is around the corner. Okay, so those two are very, very high comorbidity with depression and anxiety. Anything you want to add to this slide, Scarlett, or anybody?
No, I mean, it's definitely a good list to have, because I think, when people, because if we sit down, if somebody who's has experiences depression and anxiety, if they sit down and went through each category, they'll be able to identify, oh yeah, I'm not really getting along with my friends. Me and my friend had this big, so that's the social pressure, financial difficulties. Man, I'm having trouble paying my bills. Like, I don't know when my next check's gonna come in. Housing related, it's just like, oh man, I don't, especially for, homelessness, that especially goes on in King County. It's just like, I don't know where I'm gonna sleep tonight. I don't know if I'm staying with somebody. I don't know how long they want me to be in their place. So it's all of those, like I said, if you go in each category, you'll be able to sit and break it down of what someone is going through.
Yeah. Absolutely. And a lot of these different things too on this list can trigger a lot of other things as well. Because remember in that video in the beginning, it was talking about how if you have a family history of depression and you have that, genes or something, like you're a lot more vulnerable, a lot more susceptible to be able to experience depression as well. Right. So, and so if you're having difficulty in a relationship or something, or you're experiencing trauma currently, well, that can kind of activate that for you, depression, right? Especially if it like runs in your family or something like that. So what are some ways to manage anxiety and depression? These are some of the I would say interventions that I commonly would use with my clients to be able to combat anxiety and depression. So like for example, with anxiety and challenging irrational thoughts, because like with anxiety, remember you're constantly worrying about things that hasn't happened, but it's like in the future, right? It's more future oriented. So you're having all of these thoughts, what if, right? And so one of the ways that I would work with clients and sort of it's one intervention, right? It's one of the ways that we're able to kind of teach clients to be able to manage or cope with anxiety is I always tell them, like, be the lawyer of your thoughts, right? So put your thoughts on trial. So whatever thoughts that's coming in for you, like, oh, you have a thought that, something bad is going to happen. Okay, put that thought on trial. That means ask it questions. So ask it a series of questions. So questions like, is this thought based on facts or feelings? Okay, if it's based on feelings, then it's like, okay, well, your feelings change a lot. Like you could be happy today and sad tomorrow, or sad the next minute. How would like you can also ask questions like, how would my best friend see this situation? Or whatever it is, whatever that thought is, continue to ask it some of these. We call it Socratic questioning, which are questions that you're just kind of you're just kind of asking to be able to challenge those irrational thoughts that's coming to your mind. So how likely is my fear going to will come true? What's most likely to happen? And if my fear does come true, will it still matter a week from now? Will it matter a month from now? Will it matter a year from now? So it takes a lot of sort of really, it's like you really have to train yourself to, like, okay, it's almost like capturing the thoughts. So it's like having to be able to, like, whatever irrational thoughts that's coming to your mind, how can you challenge it? And you challenge those irrational thoughts by asking it some of these questions. Like, so some of those questions that I just thought based on a fact or feeling, how would my best friend see this situation? How likely is it that my fear will come true? What's most likely to happen? Because more than likely, we tend to think about the worst case scenario about a lot of things, but we don't think about, well, what's more likely to happen? Because when we're in our irrational way of thinking about things, all we think about immediately is the worst case scenario. So we always try to train our clients to like, well, what's more likely to happen? Because you don't think about that. You don't think, your mind doesn't go there. Your mind just kind of hyper focuses on the worst case scenario that could happen. Using imagery. So, like for example, like what do you see, or what are some of the things that you see around you? What do you notice in the distance? Like if you're, what are some of the sounds that you could hear? So anything that engages your five senses. So you're seeing, you're hearing, smelling, taste, feeling, anything that engages all of your five senses. A lot of grounding techniques. So, for example, some of the mental exercises that because like when you're anxious and your mind is just in a lot of irrational ways of thinking about things, you want to be able to find ways to ground yourself, to bring yourself back to the right here, right now moment. And one way you can do this is mental exercises. And one of the mental exercises that my clients like to do is counting backwards from like, well, this is my teen clients, counting backwards from 100 by sevens. So I think it's like by seven. So you count back, and for some people it takes them, like they have to think about it. Like it's not something that, like, not by twos, right? Because then people will be like, oh, 100, nah, 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 nah. It's like you have to, like, it's like you mentally have to think about it. And that's the whole point of grounding techniques, is to be able to bring you back to the here and now. Depression, some of the interventions that we use with clients, and maybe there'll be another class where I'm going to just really take the time to be able to talk about these interventions. But behavioral activation. So behavioral activations are like choosing an activity. Like it could be walking, it could be calling a friend or texting a friend. But just anything that's able to, like, activate a different behavior, I guess, in you. So whether that is walking, even though for someone that's depressed, it may be really, really difficult to be able to get up every morning and to walk. But if you are experiencing depression, maybe behavioral activation is something that you're like not willing to do, but what is something else? And we kind of listed some of those things, like social support. Like, are you able to just text someone just so that you can continue to have connection with someone, and that you're not continuing to isolate yourself in your depressive thoughts and depressive moods and things like that? But you really want to kind of lean on your existing relationships. Three good things. This intervention of three good things is just, it's almost like because like negative thinking has a way of is sort of like this defining feature for depression, right? So you want to be like, you want to be able to like intentionally think about something positive. So three positive experiences from your day, and then why did this positive experience, so you're kind of like really taking the time to reflect on those three positive experiences. And then mindfulness. If you guys were in one of our classes, and Scarlett was able to do like sort of like this mindfulness exercise with us, that's kind of like what mindfulness exercise is, where we're just taking the time to, like, maybe letting our mind kind of drift into following either guided meditation or something like that. But the point is, you are intentionally practicing these things. Scarlett, did you want to add anything to this one?
No, those are all really good things. So in the chat, I put again 50 ways to take a break. And so some of those behavioral activations that Sala was talking about either can be used for depression and anxiety. I always give that list to my clients, and so it's all pictures with words on too.
We love that.
But yeah, so like for example, when I started using the list for me personally, one of the biggest things that I do is I cloud watch. that's one of the things it says on there. It's just to watch clouds. It's just because part of what Sala is talking about is, especially with anxiety, is how do we slow down? That's really what these behavioral activations are about. How do we slow down, be intentional, and focus on, like Sal was saying, body awareness, mental awareness of what's going on with you? Because it's easier to be pulled out, and because it's like so many things are pulling at you. But when you are able to slow down, address what's going on, feel what's going on, especially with grounding, it really, really helps. It's like, all right, what am I feeling? What do I need to go through? What do I need to say? Who can I seek help from? So that's the big point of all it. It's just one of the biggest points is to continue to how do we slow down the brain, especially.
So, okay. And then how can we continue to navigate cultural stigmas around depression and anxiety? I, you know, I propose, just three different ways. And this is again at all not like, your complete go-to. It's just 3 points that I'm like, I feel like these points are important. And one is, in order to continue to navigate stigmas around these things, especially cultural stigmas, is hopefully just being open to talk about it, to dialogue, to in someone we say talanoa. So just be open to dialogue about it, either individually to someone that hopefully you trust and you feel safe with, or collectively in a group. Because like, as we were talking about earlier, like continuing to talk about these things really normalizes these depressive and anxious concerns for our communities, right? So, but if we don't talk about it, if we don't share our stories, then it's almost as if we just continue to like, okay, like I'm not going through it. I'm just gonna like, pretend like I'm not going through it. But if we continue to share our stories, continue to show up and be able to either you're talking to someone about it or be open to talk to someone about it individually or in a group, that's us kind of normalizing anything that has to do with mental health. Right? We already know that there's a stigma on mental health. We already know that there's a stigma with depression and anxiety and all of that. So I just hope that, when it comes down to it, that you are open to be able to just continue to have the conversation, hopefully with someone that you can trust and that you feel safe with, either individually or in a group. Number two, just be able to refrain from self-isolation. That's really big, especially for someone that's experiencing depression, right? Depression, that it just makes you just want to just go into your own cocoon and just like tune the entire world out. But this is when you truly need to be able to lean into our communities, right? If our culture is what you value, whatever your values are, like lean into that, and not isolate yourself from that. Whether it's faith community, lean into your faith communities, and really again like refrain from being able to isolate yourself, because when you isolate yourself, it only perpetuates sort of the cycle of depression, and it just continues, like the symptoms just worsen, right? But again, like to be able to navigate the stigmas around it, just be able to refrain from self-isolation, and hopefully just be able to lean into our communities and our trusted groups for support. And then last but not least, just keeping in mind that depression and anxiety does not discriminate. It doesn't matter if you are, male, female, old, young. It doesn't matter the demographics. It doesn't matter socioeconomic status. It does not discriminate. So hopefully that can, make you feel like it doesn't matter what culture you come from. It doesn't matter what nationality you are. You are bound, as you've heard the statistics, like someone probably is experiencing depression and anxiety. You don't see it, you don't hear about it, but I can guarantee you someone is experiencing depression and anxiety. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening or it's not there. So hopefully that kind of lets you know, like, you're not alone in this. You're not alone, and if you're experiencing depression and anxiety, you're not alone in any of this. So, Scarlett, did you want to add anything?
I did want to ask a question of you.
Mm-hmm.
So, for somebody who found their support and safe system, but still kind of is leery to talk about depression or anxiety, and they don't want to say depression or anxiety, like what is something that they can say to the person
Mm-hmm.
to talk about what's going on with them? Like what's like one or two things that would help them start that to tell them what,
Yeah.
just be open to
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah, I want to share, like, there was a moment for me in growing up to where I was able to, like, my cousins were like my safe support system. And when I was
Mhm.
going through what I know now to be, depression, I think I didn't even I didn't have the words for it whatsoever, but I think I just said to my cousin, I'm not okay. That was it.
Mhm.
I just said I'm not okay because, like, one, I was young. I didn't know, it's it's not common in Samoa,
Mhm.
to be able to, like, these words, depression, anxiety. So I think I just said to my cousin, like, I'm not okay. And then I think with her and I just being able to talk it through, not even saying the words depression or anxiety, but just being able to, I guess, I talk more so about the somatic things that I was feeling at that time.
Mhm.
Because I think for me it was, and I would also venture to say, like, for mainly in our collectivistic communities, I think we would recognize the somatic symptoms more than we would,
Mhm.
like, emotional symptoms, right? So I think I could remember, like, just kind of talking through, or telling my cousins, like, how I felt physically.
Mhm.
So little did I know I was kind of describing sort of the somatic symptoms, but that's what I remember, is I just kind of remember saying to her, like, I'm not okay. And then
Love that.
we just kind of talked through it, and I think at that time we didn't really know what it was or what it's called, but
Mhm.
yeah.
I love that.
Was there any questions or just comments about this? Remember, when it comes to depression, like, 1 in 10 people will experience depression in their lifetime. And a lot of the times, people are experiencing it between the ages of 20 to 30 years old. It's when they first kind of have their, I think I read is when they first experience depression. So it's pretty common. Anxiety, depression, pretty common, and they kind of almost go hand in hand. It's really, really strong comorbidity between depression and anxiety. If you're anxious long enough, more than likely, um, you'll experience depression. Any questions or comments?
Um, yeah, I just wanted to read a few things from the Facebook chat. Someone said journaling helps them a lot, and
Awesome.
then life itself can be overwhelming, and anxiety is very real. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, good topic,
Mm-hmm.
interesting topic. I'm usually a share bear during these things, but as you were speaking, Sala, I was just doing check boxes. I was like, bro, that's me, that's me, that's me. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm in danger zone over here. But no, it was good information. It was just tough. It
Mm-hmm.
was interesting
Yeah.
stuff to process. But
It,
as a someone male, I'm not going to admit a lot of those things, but eye
Mhm.
opening.
So someone said in the Zoom chat, so basically not use the direct words of, oh, are you depressed, but just give the safe space to just allow someone to speak or vent. So I think because I think part of what Sal and I are talking about is because there's such a heavy, it's almost like it's a, what are those word cards? It's like it's a taboo word.
mm,
Because people just don't, when people think depressed, it's almost like I don't know what to do with that. And it's just like, so we try to find words that help, people to help navigate what's going on. And so a lot of times, like I've helped, individuals when they didn't want to say depressed, and I'm just like, So it just sounds like you're having a hard time shaking this sadness that you're telling me about. And so they were able to really connect with the word sadness. And then we were able to unfold from there. So really it's just like allowing them to, because again, it's even if you say anxiety, I mean, like, oh man, you don't stop tripping, you good.
Yeah.
You know, like you good, there ain't nothing wrong with y'all. It's just, but there is. And so that's why when Sal and I talk about, like, you have to find that supportive, safe person, safe community who's able to literally accept you for what you're saying and not take it lightly. You know, so what I know for Sal and I, anytime somebody comes to us, whether family or not, they be like, man, I'm feeling this. And I'm like, all right, what do you want to do about it? You know, because we know it's real, you know, being in this field for as long as we know it's real. And so we just don't want it to be like pushed under the rug any longer.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Let's see. All right. That was it. Any questions, comments, or anything maybe anybody just want to share, either their experience or just anything that just want to give space for anybody has anything.
Great conversation, everybody.
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
Great conversation.
I know there's a lot of information, lots
to process.
But yes, absolutely. But like we said, like we still felt like it was a good amount of information that wasn't like, this is like basic. We can absolutely have another class on another anxiety disorder or depressive disorder, and we can go into that. But this was sort of like that foundational basic, this are the symptoms, this is that, and just be able to introduce everyone to it. Not from like, the sense of like what everybody's kind of throwing around is like, oh, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm just like, no, you can have anxiety and not be clinically diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. You can be depressed and not be clinically diagnosed as one of the depressive disorders. So there's a huge difference, as you guys could see. So we wanted to make sure that our communities are getting that difference, right? Because we kind of hear a lot, like everybody's kind of saying it these days, like, oh, I'm so depressed, I'm this. I'm like, okay, we know what that is. Now you guys are able to say, okay, not clinically, but this. Hopefully.
Yeah. And even after this, like I said, if you still have questions about depression and anxiety, please continue to reach out to us. Like I said, Sal and I are always willing to answer the questions. That's what we're here for. So somebody said in the chat, just want to share, I'm currently seeing someone for depression and anxiety. So just to have this being available and having these Zoom conversations is great. So thank you. You're absolutely welcome to. Absolutely. Yep. So again, we appreciate you all so much for having these. And so Sala, anything else you wanna wrap up with?
Nope, that was it. I'm gonna turn it over to our amazing host, Celie. All yours.
Yeah, for sure.
That want to check boxes tonight instead of participating. Okay.
No, the box checking
you're gonna
was
hear it from us.
No, it was just overwhelming. It was just like, dang, man, am I depressed? Do I have anxiety? What is going on here? I thought I had it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have 2 more sessions this month. I believe part 7 is on May 16th. And the topic is what are your boundaries? So
What's your boundaries?
That's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
As you're processing whether you're depressed or have anxiety, you can create boundaries.
Look, you can like eliminate all of the anxiety and depressive symptoms if you know your boundaries. So please, save yourself all of those symptoms if you know your boundaries. So come to the boundary class, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, me and you both.
Just real quickly on the boundaries. what Sal and I talk about is the balance of boundaries and culture. That's the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times people think boundaries and think I have to forget where I came from. That's not what
Mhm.
we're doing. So I just wanted to
Mm.
put that out. We are talking about the balance of boundaries and culture.
Mhm.
So yeah, so tune in for that. The videos will be live on our YouTube King County page for those who want to share. And then other folks, I do share out the YouTube link with close partners, so you can pass that on. So thanks everyone, and thank you especially to Scarlett and Sala for taking down us that red pilling that rabbit hole.
We're
Bye,
just giving out the
everyone.
information.
Right.
Yeah.